What's going on, guys? Kaja here, and today I want to show you guys the best rogue build for Season 6. This right here is the spin to win build, or what I like to call it, the AC130 build. Essentially, what this build allows you to do is have a constant Dance of Night cycle with insane damage buffs. Here's how to do it. So, first off, we want to go into abilities. You want to use Blade Shift and to use Enhanced Blade Shift. We want starter step for the 5% movement speed increase every time we hit a critical hit. We want 3 ranks of sturdy for that 18% damage reduction. 2 into siphoning strikes for that health increase from hitting critical strikes. We want as much points into Dance of Knives as possible. We want rugged for the 20%, 27% damage over time decrease. We want as many ranks into weapon mastery as possible. This is going to make Dance of Knives even more powerful. Trick attacks and unstable elixirs, we want 3 of them into both. We want 1 rank into the evasive and 1 rank into agile, just for the evasive perk of the damage reduction after using your evade. 1 rank into concealment, enhanced concealment, and subverting concealment. This will allow us to have infinite critical hit strikes at all times. As many ranks as to Dark Shroud as possible for that damage reduction. And enhanced Dark Shroud for the movement speed you get for having Dark Shroud active. We want 1 rank into poison imbuement and treat it to blended poison imbuement. This is going to have an increased critical hit strike against poison enemies. We want 3 ranks into alchemical advantage for that lucky hit chance increase. We want to treat up to debilitating toxins for that 10% damage decrease for enemies. And we want as many points as to Bridge of Finesse as we can. Next up, we get Apprentice, so we get a 15% increased damage for our agility skills, which is our Dance of Knives, our ultimate skill. We want as many points into Shadow Clone as we possibly can, just for the Shadow Clone to deal more damage. We want to tree up to Haste and get 3 points into Haste. This will allow us to have increased movement speed and increase attack speed. Then for our key passive, we want Momentum. This is going to allow us to have increased movement speed, increased damage, and damage reduction at all times. So that all plays into our gear. For our gear, we want Air of Perdition. We want to get as many ranks into movement speed as we can. For our GA, we kind of wanted it on lucky hit chance, but unfortunately we didn't get that. This is where the build kicks up a notch. So Shroud of Kandurus, we want a GA into Dark Shroud. And why we want Shroud of Kandurus is because of our back and Yam rune word. So every time we hit 50 meters, we invoke Petrify, and what Petrify allows us to do is it automatically reduces all the cooldowns of your abilities, so you can cast them over and over and over again. Now, because we're using Shroud of Kandurus, we are able to cast Dark Shroud as much as possible. And with Shroud of Kandurus, every time we cast Dark Shroud, we are just immune for 2 seconds. So this is strictly for us to just stay alive as much as possible. Next up, for our damage increase, we want Fist of Fate. preferably a 2 GA on attack speed and lucky hit chance. This is going to allow us to just blow through all enemies as fast as possible. For our pants, we want what you see here. We want dexterity, and we want poison resist or any type of resistance as possible. For our tempering for this, we want to temper into total armor and chance to freeze. For our imprint, we only use a frostbitten imprint for the second part of the perk. This allows us to deal 23% critical strike damage against all enemies. Next up, we have Noxious Ice, and for our boots, preferably we want the GA to be on Dance of Knives and all of our masterworking to hit on the Dance of Knives. We also want movement speed on our boots, and we want the chance to freeze again. So we want chance to freeze as high as we possibly can, and we want our Dance of Knives GA to be as high as we possibly can. And of course, we have Noxious Ice, so every time we hit something with poison imbuement, they'll be chilled, and we deal increased damage to frozen enemies. Moving on, for our weapons, we want as much critical strike damage and chance of knives to deal double damage as much as possible. This is going to allow us to have our Dance of Knives do insane damage at all times. For our imprint, we want the aspect of synergy. This allows us to have reduced cooldowns on our subterfuge skills and increase damage from our agility skills, which Dance of Knives is also an agility skill. Next up, we have our Star Shards aspect. We want to put this on our main hand weapon. So for this, we want critical strike damage and damage GAs. For our tempering, we want cutthroat attack speed, so we have increased attack speed for Dance of Knives, and of course that Dance of Knives to deal double damage. We want Dance of Knives to deal double damage as close to as 100 as we possibly can, so we can always have that double damage going. And of course, the main reason why you're using Dance of Knives is because of the Star Shards aspect, where we can throw our Dance of Knives, and each knife has a chance of splitting into 6 different knives and dealing damage to other enemies. Next up, we have our unique dagger. This dagger allows us to have +4 to weapon mastery, which is amazing, and also increases our attack speed. Next up, we have our rings. For rings, we want critical strike damage, of course, and we want our cooldown reduction and our attack speed. So our cooldown reduction, normally we want it on our Dark Shroud, but unfortunately I only got it on agility. Next up, same thing, we want critical strike damage and damage per Dark Shroud. Up here, we want total armor and damage per Dark Shroud. And for this, we want our momentum keep passive to deal increased damage. So the aspect of Stolen Vigor, amazing for that. Over here, we want that clandestine imprint. So our agility and subterfuge skills just have a +3 increase. Over here, we want the aspect of retribution. This allows enemies to get stunned every time they try to hit us from range, which we will be at range at all times. And we deal increased damage to knock down or stunned enemies. Next up, we have our Paragon board. So at first, we want to slot in versatility. This is going to allow us to have our Dance of Knives deal 25% increased damage with that additional 40 dexterity bonus. And also, because of this, we have 230% increase of magical nodes. So, of course, we have 106% increased damage to elites, 7.4 increased damage, and 71.1 increased damage. Moving forward, we want to slot in Dance Macabre, and we want to put in Devious. We want Dance Macabre because our mobility and our subterfuge skills increase our next damage, which is always going to be Dance of Knives. Then we want to slot in our Devious skill. So our Devious skill is going to allow us to have more CC against all enemies and more damage to CC against all enemies. Moving forward, we want to slot in Control for our exploit weakness. So our exploit weakness is hitting a vulnerable enemy has a 60% chance to increase our damage by 1% up to 25% as long as we keep stacking damage. And having Control on here, so we just deal increased damage to crowd control enemies, and we deal increased damage to chilled or frozen enemies. Moving forward, we have our Headhunter glyph mixed with our cheap shot glyph. So our cheap shot glyph increases our damage to staggered enemies. So any enemy that's knocked down and nearby staggered bosses also increases the damage of cheap shot. Also, our Headhunter skill increases our damage to elites. Then, moving forward, we have our No Witnesses and our Fluidity. So this right here is going to be an insane damage increase. So using our ultimate increases our damage by 10% for 10 seconds. And Fluidity, every time we cast our agility skill, our damage increases by 10%. So the reason why we use No Witnesses is because of our Petrify, because Petrify is a ultimate. We will always be casting No Witnesses, and also we have Shadow Clone, which also can use No Witnesses. Then our Fluidity skill, every time we just cast our Dance of Knives, we're just going to be doing extra damage. Now, if we want to look at a damage rotation just to see how much damage we're actually doing, we can go in here. Now we're going to be doing our damage rotation so we can see how we can get the most damage out of our build. So because of our Yaks and Quacks rune word, so every time we drink 2 healing potions, our next non-basic skill, which is always going to be Dance of Knives, we're going to be doing more damage. So at first, we want to drink our 2 health potions. We want to buff ourselves up. And of course, we just want to just start using our Dance of Knives. That is about it. And using our Petrify, we deal increased damage. Now, one key thing to note is to have our Dance of Knives be as long as possible. We want our for our Dance of Knives to last as long as possible, we want our movement speed to be 200%. This is going to allow us to have Dance of Knives at all times. Now, what you don't want to do while you're casting is move in a jagged motion. We always want to move in a very fluid motion, because doing this, as you can see, your Dance of Knives is going to go away. But if we move in a nice fluid motion, nice clean circles, getting as many steps in as we can, our Dance of Knives is never going to go away. Always want to be in a nice fluid motion, and our Dance of Knives is just going to keep staying active. And that is the optimal damage rotation. Now this build completely excels in pits, hordes, and Undercity. Once Shroud of False Death gets re-enabled into the game, I will make a updated video on the damage numbers against bosses. Other than that, I will leave you with some background footage, and MIPY is the original creator of this build. This is just my variation of it. So all credit goes to him for making this build. I will link his build in the description below. And other than that, I will leave you with some background footage, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hey guys, Future Casual here. If you have any questions about the build or want me to go further in detail about the build and like show all the min maxes and whatnot, follow me on Twitch. I'm live every single day, and pop in, ask any questions you want about the build, or if you want me to go further in detail about the build or anything. And if you just want to hang out, join Twitch. Thanks. See you. Love you.